Hi, welcome to Chapter 19, Section 2 of the American Pageant. We're going to be covering the Dred Scott decision, the Dred Scott Bombshell. To the rail splitter from Illinois, born in Kentucky, you might have heard of him, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, that's what I call my wife, if she was president. It's a Waynesboro joke. So, Dred Scott, this is probably the worst decision in Supreme Court history. Good job, Roger B. Taney, you moron. It looked like Skeletor. 2 days after James Buchanan was inaugurated president on March 6th, 1857, the Dred Scott case was handed down. Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott was a former slave who had moved around. He lived with his master, who was a doctor, and he lived all over the country. Dred Scott had lived in free states in Wisconsin and Illinois. His owner had passed away. And Dred Scott was, willed down to whoever the heir was. And he said that, you know what, my owner's dead. I've lived in a free state. Shouldn't I be free? And so this case was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court gave their decision on March 6th, 1857. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney from Maryland stated, you're a slave. You can't sue. Sorry, you have no rights. You know what? It was a good chance, a good try. If Roger Taney stopped right there, we don't talk about this. It's just kind of a little blip on the radar in history. But he goes further. It's kind of like the very end of the movie Billy Madison. When Billy Madison gives his rambling essay about the puppy who lost his way and compares it to the Industrial Revolution, and it makes no sense. And the principal says, I award you no points. We are now all dumber for having listened to you. May God have mercy on your soul. And Billy Madison goes, well, simple wrong would have been okay. Dred Scott could have said the same thing, because Roger B. Taney goes further. He says next, slaves are property. And in the Constitution, the Fifth Amendment, as Dave Chappelle calls it, the Fifth Amendment, says that you cannot deprive anyone of property without due process of law. So, going further, this is property. We have the Fifth Amendment. You can't make a law to take property away. Therefore, it is illegal to ban slavery. What? It's illegal to ban slavery. The North's going, wait, we already banned it. Like, yeah, that's illegal. You can't do that anymore. You need to let them have their slaves. It also means that popular sovereignty is also illegal, because it is property. And it's a low point in American history. It really just showed how deep the divisions were in slavery and how evil this system was. They're equating a person with a heart and a soul and a brain, to your luggage or to your slippers or to your car, that you can take it anywhere. And by the letter of the law, you know what, Roger Taney, maybe you're correct, but it's insensitive, it's cold. It's not considering that this is a person, a living, breathing person, not your toothbrush. And so Southerners they're slapping their knees, shooting guns in the sky, eating, who knows, grits, whatever that nasty stuff is you Southerners eat. Sorry, I don't like them. And the Northerners are just appalled, going, are you kidding me? We already banned slavery like 75 years ago. And they're going, no, you didn't. Whoops. Hey, welcome to office, James Buchanan. So there's Roger B. Taney. Worst decision ever. Good job, dude. Jerk. While this is going on, we have a financial crisis. Oh, man. Let's just make it worse. You guys thought 2016 was bad. Try 1857. You have James Buchanan, who's, come on, he's terrible. You have the bleeding Kansas. You have the Dred Scott decision. And to make matters worse, we've got money issues. There was over speculation going on in the West because of the inflation due to all that gold from California. I love gold. The North was the hardest hit, while the South continued to flourish with its cotton. They're just selling cotton abroad, making a good old money. Yep, cotton is king. And Northerners had 5,000 businesses closed, so things are getting a little desperate in the North. Northerners came up with the idea that, you know what, to get people out of the city, because you have all these, jobless people hanging around, turning to gangs, doing whatever, we should just give land away for free. We got so much land out west. Just give them 160 acres. Let them go farm it. It'll improve the land. We'll get rid of these homeless people. We'll get rid of these unemployed people. You don't worry about those Native Americans, because they were insensitive back then and they didn't care for them. Um, and two groups opposed the idea. I mean, it sounds like a great idea. We have so much land. Eastern industrialists did not like this. You're going to take all our workers. We need these people. You can't just let them go live and be farmers. We need workers. We're not doing well right now, but we need to hire them. Southerners also didn't like the idea that if you fill it up with all these Northerners, you're going to fill it up with free soilers, and then they're going to turn into anti-slavery states, which is going to upset the balance of power in the Senate in the South, rise again and all that. They need to take care of themselves, and the Three-Fifths Compromise and mint juleps and everything other is a stereotype of the South. Congress passed the Homestead Act in 1860, making public lands available for 25 cents an acre, but it was vetoed by, yes, that big dumb animal, President Buchanan. He's the worst president ever. You're terrible, President Buchanan. The tariff of 1857 lowered import taxes by 20%, which was to the delight of Southerners because they don't like paying high prices, and to the chagrin of Northern manufacturers. The South seems like they're on a winning streak. Woo, Dred Scott. Yeah, no Homestead Act. Lower import taxes. Yee-haw! North blamed it for causing the panic. They also felt they needed higher duties for more protection. And this gave the Republicans a lot of ammunition, some economic issues to appeal to a broader base of people for the election of 1860. Not just the anti-slavery people. Now they have an economic platform to go for. So let's talk about Abe Lincoln. In 1858, the Illinois Senate race pits the incumbent, the very powerful, the guy, the driving force behind the Compromise of 1850, the man behind the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the booming, speaking Stephen A. Douglas against a relative unknown, this tall, lanky, really weird-looking guy named Abraham Lincoln. He's running for the Republicans, this pretty new party. Lincoln, he's an odd-looking fellow. He's 6'4", so he's eventually he's the tallest president ever. He weighs only 180 pounds. His legs, his arms, and his neck were abnormally long. Some people have speculated he's had some genetic disorders or something going on. He had a gaunt face. He had unruly hair. To put it politely, he's pretty ugly. He's got a giant wart on his face. He's really skin and bones, and he's just a weird-looking guy. I mean, we're used to his look, but if Abe Lincoln walked into your room right now while you're watching this, you'd be like, oh, that guy's disturbing. Hi. Oh. Got a face only a mother can love. He also wasn't a powerful speaker. He had a high speaking voice. Now, it's not squeaky like Mickey Mouse. He's not like, slavery is bad. But it wasn't a booming baritone voice like Stephen Douglas. Now, there's no recordings of Abe Lincoln, but this is all the written, things about it, that he just didn't have a great voice. He also had a peculiar habit. When he wanted to make a point, politicians do this. We have Donald Trump who does this, whatever. I don't know, he's like playing charades. Abe Lincoln, to emphasize a point, instead of, whatever, would bend down, crouch down and put his hands below his knees, and then jump straight up in the air and raise his arms. Like he's doing jumping jacks. On stage. Like, slavery is bad! I have no idea what's going on. And yet, when he spoke, people listened. He had an air of wisdom to him that, even when he was a young man, they called him a wise old man. He was smart. He was intelligent. He was raised in an impoverished background, raised in a log cabin in Kentucky, self-taught. He maybe had 4 years of schooling, but he's a hard worker. He was a rail splitter. He was actually a champion wrestler. He served in militia in the Black Hawk War. He failed at business, but he was a very good lawyer. And as a lawyer, he didn't take cases that, he didn't believe in, that were, with unruly characters or dishonest people. And so because of that, he gets the nickname Honest Abe. He loved to tell stories. He seemed wise. He had a good sense of humor. And he married Mary Todd from Kentucky, who's pretty high-strung. She's from a very wealthy, very powerful family in Kentucky. She bragged at one point she was going to marry a future president of the United States. And they courted each other, and then they broke it off suddenly. For 18 months, they didn't see each other. And then when they got back together, after 18 months of separation, they got back together, and the next day, they got married. She's one of the wealthiest people in Kentucky/Illinois. She's from a powerful family. And on one day's notice, she gets married. Historians have speculated that she had goaded him into bed. and that Lincoln was so guilty of having sex outside of marriage that he had to just get married the next day, no matter what. They did have a child 9 months later, so you can put two and two together. Like I said, honest Abe because he refused cases of a lawyer that made him suspend his conscience. Lincoln served previously in the Illinois legislature as a Whig politician, and he only served one term in national politics. He was a congressman for 2 years, right when the Mexican-American War broke out, and he lost a lot of elections. He wasn't as successful as you think. He had a lot of resilience. He was brilliant. He was a great lawyer. He taught himself everything, but he just a weird-looking guy and weird speaking. Now, this is actually Abraham Lincoln, the first known picture of him before the separation from Mary Todd, before he kind of starved himself. And it's so different that people didn't even think it was Abe Lincoln. And through computer technology, they've actually proved that is indeed Abraham Lincoln in the early 1840s. It's the oldest picture of him. So we'll come back next time with the great debate, Lincoln versus Douglas, and all that stuff going on. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Leave a question or comment, let me know. Never mind, I stopped it at the wrong place. We're going to go a little further for today. Hope that's okay. So the great debate. So Stephen Douglas, Abe Lincoln, they agreed to a series of 7 debates for the Senate election of 1858. Douglas, who's the probable candidate for the presidential election of 1860 for the Democrats, who suspiciously looks like an Oompa Loompa there. You don't believe me? Picture his hair green and his face orange. Yeah. They had 7 debates, and Douglas, he's one of the best debaters in the nation. In Lincoln, nobody knows who he is, but they're willing to talk about the one thing that everyone was kind of talking about, that they're really not willing to debate. They're going to talk about slavery. And so the whole country follows along on these Senate debates in the newspapers. I mean, there's reporters from all over the country listening, writing down, and publishing accounts of these debates. In the debate, Stephen Douglas gives his Freeport doctrine. They asked him a question. They said, you're big on popular sovereignty, but you don't like slavery. What happens if, like in Kansas, they vote for slavery and they don't really want it? It's fraudulent. And he goes, well, that's funny. You can exclude slavery by passing laws or not passing laws to protect it. You can just ignore the Supreme Court. You can ignore the Dred Scott case and, just ignore it. Yeah, slavery's approved, but we're not going to have any laws to protect it. And he thought he was pretty wascally and pretty, pretty cute with this. And Southerners went, oh, no, you didn't, boy. We're never voting for you now. We know you don't like slavery. Slavery decision. He said the Supreme Court decision did not overturn or overrule popular sovereignty. The voice of the people was more powerful than the Supreme Court. And so because of this, Douglas further splits the Democratic Party. Good job, Stephen Douglas. Lincoln, very famously, he performed admirably. He just showed his brilliance and his wit, and people, they started to know this guy. That, hey, that Abraham Lincoln, he's got some stuff going for him. Famously, he quoted the Bible by saying, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And then he went further and said, I believe that this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. In the end, though, Douglas wins the election because back then the people didn't elect the senators directly. That's not until the 17th Amendment. The Illinois state legislature, controlled by the Democrats, elected Stephen Douglas. But Lincoln is now a national figure. Good job, Abe Lincoln. So there's Lincoln in the debates. Look at him, pretty neat. Oh, let's come back to John Brown. John Brown, very important person. In October 1859, John Brown, believing he still had a mission from God, he and 18 men seized an arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. This is a federal arsenal controlled by the Army. Their plan, seize an arsenal, take the guns, give them to slaves. The slaves are going to revolt, and they're going to have this slave army that goes through the South and frees slaves and end slavery once and for all. They hoped for this slave revolt. They had many of their men wounded to take this arsenal, and they quickly realized that once they got the guns, that the slaves did not revolt. It's like, hey, did you tell the slaves that we were doing this today? I thought you did. Oh, man. Oh, well. In the end, he's captured, he's tried, he's convicted, and he's hanged. Very controversial figure. Today, we would call him a terrorist. Back then, they didn't use that term. It's a 20th and 21st century term. Troops under the command of Robert E. Lee were the ones who captured him. His trial tore the nation in two. It's not what he does, it's how people react to what he did. In the South, he's a murderer, he's a villain, he's evil. We would call him a terrorist, and the likes of Osama bin Laden. In the North, he's a hero, he's a martyr. He died for the cause of slavery. And Southerners are shocked. They're like, are you kidding me? You like this guy? What is wrong with you? He tried to end the American way of life. He brought violence to us. He killed people. And you like him? And Northerners are shocked that they're so upset that Southerners don't think he's the Antichrist. The South truly believed, because of this, that there's a Northern conspiracy to destroy the way of life. They had the evidence. You have the Republican Party. You have the book by Hinton Helper. You have John Brown. You have all these things going on. The impending crisis of the South, they couldn't even publish it in the South. They had to publish it in the North, and Northerners, they liked the book. Southerners banned it. So then the Republicans loved it. So the Republicans liked this book. The Republicans are behind this. You have John Brown. They love John Brown. They don't enforce the Fugitive Slave Act, and so they are convinced there is a conspiracy. Ralph Waldo Emerson compares John Brown to Jesus. And the South goes, what are you talking about? This guy's a murderer. They cannot believe that he is praised. Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, called him the meteor because everything exploded. And this is why the crotchety, cranky old man from the original Civil War series that came out, what's his face? Said John Brown, very important person. And then this is why. He's a meteor. He tore the country in two. So here's John Brown on his execution, giving a kiss to an African-American baby. He was hanged. Somebody cut off his ear after he was hanged. Lincoln did not agree with the violence, but he admired that this guy was willing to die for the cause of slavery. Let's get this. Come on. So, the election of 1860. You have a big, big mess. The Democrats were split because of Stephen Douglas and his Freeport Doctrine. At their convention in Charleston, South Carolina, they can't come to one candidate. The Northern Democrats picked Stephen Douglas. The Southern Democrats picked John C. Breckinridge. Douglas was hurt by his Freeport Doctrine. In Tennessee, you have the Constitutional Union Party. They picked John Bell. I like to call them the why can't we just all get along party. So you have three candidates already, and we haven't even got to the major other party. You have the Republicans, who meet in Chicago, home state of Abraham Lincoln, and they picked Lincoln instead of William Seward. Seward was the most outspoken politician against slavery, but he's too radical. He wants to end slavery now. Lincoln wants to stop slavery from spreading. Eventually he wants gradual emancipation. He wants compensated emancipation. He doesn't call for the immediate emancipation of people, and he even supports back to Africa movements for freed slaves. And so he's more of a moderate, and the Republicans pick him. The Republican platform appealed to nearly every part of the nation. For free soilers, Republicans supported the non-extension of slavery. For northern manufacturers, they supported raising protective tariffs. For immigrants, they supported no abridgments of rights. We're not going to take away your rights just because you're a foreigner. In the Northwest, they supported the Pacific Railroad, the Transcontinental Road to go all the way to Oregon. For the West, they supported internal improvements, more railroads, more canals, more roads at federal expense. For farmers, they support free homesteads from the public domain. They basically reach out to everyone except Southern slaveholders and Southerners in general. And basically, Southerners are convinced that if Abraham Lincoln wins, the Union is done. If he wins, the conspiracy is true, the Republicans are out to get us, and you can tune in next time to see what happens. And here's the election of 1860, the national game, 3 outs and 1 run, Abraham winning the ball. So we will see you next time.